Oh,
That's
yeah,
my sister.
yeah. Oh, and I just saw it's 12:31. So, it looks like
Adam.
people. There's Adam,
Hi,
and
Adam.
so I'll go through what I normally do, which is since we're a little late actually. So, I don't like being late. So I'm Nancy Schick, attorney, mediator, and conflict resolution coach in New York City. My goal is to keep you out of court and build your conflict resolution skills, and that's one of the reasons I have Andrea Vacca here. So Andrea is a mentor, a friend, a collaborative divorce attorney, and just wonderful person. So, Andrea, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Vacca. So I'm a collaborative divorce attorney and mediator in New York. So that means that I do not litigate. I work exclusively with couples who want to stay out of court, and I help them either with their prenuptial agreements or their divorces or conflicts that are coming up after their divorces. But in all ways, I'm helping them come to an agreement that's less adversarial and more amicable. So that's what I do here.
Yeah.
And
So
it's
those
great
of
to
you,
be here.
yeah, and thank you for being here. And I know this is very impromptu. We've been doing a lot of impromptu things these days, but just kind of what we were chatting about before the 12:30 mark. And so for those of you that are joining us that aren't that familiar with some of the features of Zoom, I will just one, remind you that you are currently, if you have your video camera showing, and see yourself, right? If you see yourself in the screen, that means you are on the recording. If you don't want to be seen on the recording, you can just go to the bottom of the screen and stop your video. And what it'll show, your name will still show there if you have your account linked to your name, or sometimes someone else's, right, Adam? We had that the other day. So, but you can stop the video if you don't want to be on the video, because we will be sharing this after the words it is being recorded, and it will go on my YouTube channel and on some social media, because we intend to have resources for people that are looking for them during the coronavirus and just generally. So they're kind of evergreen, they'll be there forever. And just wanted to give you that warning. Likewise, right next to the stop video is the mute button. I may mute you if I hear a lot of background noise. I may mute myself at times if we get noise. But you can use that button at your discretion. And then if you want to just type in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. Hi, Adam. Hi, Nina. I see, of course, Andrea, Jennifer, and Karen. So thanks for joining us. And obviously, the chat can also be used to put in any questions that you have or resources that you want to share. So I think that takes care of the logistics. There's also you'll see the manage participants button at the bottom, or the participants. You can raise your hand in there and we'll get a notification that you have a question if you want to speak on camera or on audio if you're blocking your camera. You can do that as well. So you're welcome to do whatever you're comfortable with. Again, this is a very impromptu kind of thing that I started doing, I guess, last week, just because people were asking for resources. And also those of us that are at home working by ourselves sometimes just need to have some sort of connection with with, I would say, the outside world, but I guess it's the inside world still. So, Andrea, I want to start with one of the common questions that we're getting from people that maybe were already in the midst of uncoupling, I think, right? Maybe going through a divorce, maybe even dissolving a domestic partnership. We still have some of that going on. And now maybe they're still living together and are socially distancing in the same household. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you're seeing and what your tips are for people?
Sure. And also, I just want to clarify that we are going to be talking about divorce and also some mindset tips from Nancy and me as small business owners. And I know everyone that we can see on the call is a small business owner. So we want to have that conversation as well. So those are the two things we'll be covering today. So a lot of people who are in the middle of their divorces have literally hit a wall because they were either dependent on the court system, which is closed, or they were scheduled to have a meeting, and everyone had to pivot. No meetings in person were happening anymore, so everyone had to pivot to like a Zoom platform, and that's taken some time. So a lot of people also just needed to get their bearings. So what I'm seeing in this, now I'm home for 3 weeks now, working from home. My staff is all in their homes. 3 weeks in, people are starting to lift their head up a little bit, from the ground, and going, okay, I think I'm ready to move forward. What do we do? So I work with couples who have not been in the court system, but I am hearing from couples who were in the court system going, what do you mean we can't go? We're not going to be in court. We're not going to be going back. When? What? We don't know when it's opening. So I've been having some conversations with some attorneys about whether I could help them as a mediator. When you're in the court system, you're usually, it's very positional negotiations, and it's hard to pull out of that and say, can we have a conversation that really is focused on what's important to you? So a mediator sometimes can help kind of break through those positions and kind of have a different conversation that needs to be had, so these couples can actually move forward on their own. Other considerations that are coming up for people in the middle is that a lot of things have changed now. They thought maybe they were toward the end of their process, they were just tying up some of the loose ends, but now the value of the assets are different. The home isn't worth the same. The retirement accounts, the investment accounts, everything is different now. A lot of people who are trading, I'll keep the home, you keep the investment accounts, they can't do that anymore because no one knows what values there are. So that's the other thing we're seeing now is people are saying, wait a minute, we have to relook at this and figure out how to renegotiate who gets what based on the fact that we don't know what values are anymore. And we're not going to wait. So what do we do?
Yeah,
Andrea, I've got a question for you.
ahead.
So I'm hearing to some extent that we have been dealing with a robust economy, and yes, it may take a number of months before it gets back into swing, but there wasn't something specifically financially systemic that caused the shutdown. So if parties are agreeing now, because I got to get away from you, to something less than, is there a way that they come back, let's say in 6 months, to maybe make things a little fairer when the economy improves?
Yes, they can. What we saw in 2008-9, what people were doing were those who thought one might be keeping the home. We were seeing then, and I think we'll see that now, that people will say, you know what, let's just co-own it for a little longer before we decide if there will be a buyout or if we're going to have to sell. But we can't sell now, and I don't know what price to buy you out at. So let's hold this for a while. Or other people might say, we can do the division now, but if one of this asset class goes up significantly or drops significantly, we'll look at it at the end of the year and see where we are, and we could regroup. We could reconsider true up in some way. So yes, there's going to have to be a lot of creativity, and it's all the more reason why people should be trying to come to their own agreements right now, because the courts, when they do reopen and the line is literally around the corner and down the block, by the time you do get in there, the courts are not going to be able to have this kind of creativity that you need.
Yeah, and
Great,
they
thank
don't
you.
generally anyway, I work more on the workplace mediation and send my collaborative divorce and family matters to someone like Andrea. But I think what we're getting into now, Andrea, is exactly what makes the collaborative process and mediation so distinct. And it seems so timely. And I know you and I've talked about that. I've talked about that with Nina. And there's so many opportunities because we are a little bit more in our own spaces, right? There's not the movement at the way that we would normally be doing. So everything's changed, and whether we're doing it intentionally or not, we're being kind of forced to take a broad look at everything in our lives, right? Because we're seeing so many things every day that are breaking down or changing, and we have to constantly keep up on this. So I know you do this collaborative process, and some people may not understand what that exactly entails. So can you explain why it would be different to use a collaborative process versus court and how they might move into that?
Sure. So the collaborative process has four major components. The fact that you each have your own attorney and they're agreeing with you. Each attorney is agreeing with each client not to go to court. So it's an out-of-court process. Everybody signs an agreement saying that. You agree that you will be focused on what's most important to you and your interests rather than your positions. You agree to keep the best interests of the children front and center at all times, and you agree on honest, transparent disclosure of information and facts. And then the fifth, so those are the four main principles. But the fifth component is that it's a team approach. And that means that you each have your lawyers, but there's also a divorce coach in our process. That coach has a mental health background, and they're the financial neutral. And the financial neutral is usually a CPA or a certified divorce financial analyst. So we're dealing with the legal, emotional, and financial issues of the divorce all at once so that nothing's hijacking the other, and you have a much better outcome. It's a much more durable agreement. So if you've been in the court system, your attorneys may or may not be trained collaboratively. So you might have to if you want to switch to this process, you might have to try new lawyers, and that could be hard. So people who are already in the court system but don't want to wait, I would recommend mediation. But people who are just starting, collaborative approach is a wonderful approach because it's going to, like I said, just help you be more creative and really make sure you're coming to an agreement that addresses all of the needs of the family.
And that's one of the reasons that we call it collaborative, and it's one of the things that I love about it. But I want to take Adam. I want to take your question.
So I'm wondering if anyone on this call has actually done a mediation via Zoom or one of the comparable platforms, because my experience before COVID-19, where I had only one party participating via Skype, it was very unsuccessful. Just because there's some element about forcing people into a room and to confront each other, which makes it harder to take those ridiculously untenable positions than when they're sitting behind a computer screen and can basically either mute, stop their video, or leave the meeting at any time without really having any of the constraints that you have in a in-person, personal, face-to-face meeting. So I just wanted to get feedback on if anyone's used a video conferencing platform for a mediation, what their experience was.
I have. I don't like to do it with just one person on the call. I've only ever done it with two people away from me. So we're all on different screens, and it works. There's definitely some considerations. You don't see all the same body language. You might have to take breaks at the same time. You have to have an agreement that you're all taking breaks at the same time. No one can just wander off. I heard about a story the other day with a mediator where there was a lot of quiet, and she realized that the husband was in the bathroom. So yeah, like you have to set some ground rules in advance because people just aren't thinking clearly anymore about what's appropriate. But other than that, it's a great process. Nancy, have you worked on this platform?
I have. I did my first Zoom mediation back in the fall. And, to your point, Adam, there are opportunities to just walk away that maybe people wouldn't feel as compelled. But I agree with Andrea that if you lay the ground rules up front and you get the agreements, it's really not that different, because you can have somebody storm out of the conference room still also. I found that surprisingly, doing my first one online, it was a lot more emotional, right? Like I now that I've been doing more video, I'm starting to recognize that it doesn't decrease the emotion at all. It doesn't decrease the emotional connection that people have. And so I think, yes, you're right. There are going to be, and I know you do more on the commercial end, so there might be a different client base there that has a different way of approaching their positions and power and strength. But I think in the situation that it was a commercial employment kind of hybrid situation, and in an environment where the parties were deeply invested in each other and invested in trying to work it out. So I think, it has a lot to do with the parties, and probably if you had even been doing that particular mediation in person, you might have still gotten the same result. So don't think it's automatically the platform that's going to change it.
Yeah.
How
I
do you,
think,
sorry, Andrea. I just want to know, how would you deal with caucusing?
so in Zoom, you can do breakout rooms. I haven't used it yet, but when I do my first, I haven't done a collaborative meeting on it yet, but I will be using that feature. Yeah, so you can do breakout rooms. So it'll be the same thing. Yeah. I see Karen just posted something and said that she just listened to a webinar from Association of Family, APFM. It's like a family mediator group, I think, that had a lot of good tips on mediating divorce online. And I think you'll probably start seeing a lot more of that, Adam, maybe through jams or other places, that they might be offering those kind of programs. And then Zoom has great tips on great videos on the web and on the platform itself that you can learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Actually, the second part is starting at 1, but they were talking about like what to do to get agreements in advance in terms of somebody else being in the room and not to record, and it's worth listening to. I don't know if you have to be a member to go through it, but even if you just fast forward, they had a bunch of people that were doing that. And then I also heard something yesterday about certain platforms. I don't know if Zoom allows it if you wanted to caucus, but make sure nobody's listening, that you can password protect different rooms, so you only send the password for the wife to one and or the partner to the other. So
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's a whole new world. And we need to know it. Our clients want a seamless process. They need not to add more stress to their process. And we need to, it is up to us to figure out how to do this before they ever come on the line. So,
yeah. And I think that it is. I think people are also being rather generous with each other. Obviously, you always have people, that have different experiences and will take advantage. And Andrea, you and I talked about this before even doing this particular video, because I've learned already that there are vulnerabilities to Zoom, and there was a video, or it was an article that I believe it's the FBI has even put out something that said, you have to be careful of the vulnerabilities and know how to use the features that are available to you, so that those are legitimate concerns. So we're going to be navigating this just like we're navigating everything else during the virus, right?
right.
And I agree that you're right, Adam. People need the human contact. Sometimes that's incredibly powerful in certain mediations, but we are where we are, and so there's both the loss that we're all dealing with and the grieving around that, and there's also the realistic approach of for what we have right now. We're expecting this to be at least another 30 days. And if you're in a situation, as is probably the case, where whatever problems you had going in seem to be amplified right now, right? And so, like, if you were mid divorce, or as in the employment setting I mentioned, if you were the employer and you were planning on letting go of an employee, now's not the time to be doing that. So you're now looking for how can you improve that relationship when they come back, and what's the status, because now is not the time to terminate someone's employment permanently. You could end up with a whole host of issues. Likewise, if you're an employee, it's looking at what was going on in your workplace that maybe you could improve. So this is a great time to reflect, which takes us into, I think, the mindset topic that we kind of wanted to get into a little bit too. So Andrea, I know one of the resources that you tipped me off on was David Nagel's podcast. It's called is it the Powerful Mind
The
podcast?
Successful Mind
Successful
podcast.
Mind podcast. And so I'll put a link to that in the comments also. But I think a big part of it is just acknowledging that we have to start managing our minds, because the fears and the emotions, as Adam witnessed earlier this week with me, it can be overwhelming. And sometimes the human connection that comes across even in a video can be overwhelming, right? I'm arguably considered empathic, so I tend to absorb other people's emotions very, very easily. It's a tough thing for a mediator and a lawyer, but I took that on. It's part of what makes me hopefully good at what I do, but it's recognizing all of that, right? And so having different tools available to you to manage your mind is just going to be crucial right now. And I think don't go into that mind game that people do where you're blaming yourself for that and thinking something's wrong with you. It's like, just accept we're all dealing with that. So now go find the tools. And so yeah, what do you want to add to that?
Well, I think and there are a bunch of lawyers and those who work with clients going through conflict. We always have to be prepared not to take on we have vicarious trauma. Lawyers take on the problems of their clients, and if they're really very emotional problems, we take that on, and we have to put up a wall of or be able to, so we don't take everything home with us, or we will, not be lawyers for very long, or good lawyers. But we're all going through trauma now. We're all, every single human being that we are communicating with and is going through trauma right now. And we have to give ourselves a break while also taking care of other people. So whether it's your children or your parents or your clients or your spouse, this is really hard. And so the more we can build ourselves up to support everybody and ourselves, I think the better will come through, collectively we'll come through this on the other side. So David Nagel is doing a 3-hour, maybe Jennifer, you can speak more about this, but I know I just registered for it. It's a 3-hour program on Tuesday, free. It's about resilience and in your business as business owners. And Jen, can you say more about that? Is she still there? I don't know if she is.
She's
okay,
there.
she is. The other things I would want to say is, one thing I've been finding really helpful is just be grateful. Think about what I'm grateful for, like literally, morning and night. Write down 3 things I'm grateful for, because there are many things. So that helps me to ground me personally. And connecting with other people more, that's really important, whether it's on video. I know you wrote, Adam, that people need the human connection and contact, and unfortunately we don't have it right now. So, the way we traditionally did. So this is what we're going to have to deal with. This is it. But picking up the phone, something I didn't do all that much, and now I'm doing it. I think my clients are picking up the phone when I call from a cell number. Like, they're actually picking up the phone. People want to go, who is it? Who can I talk to? So it's very different. And I really appreciate that. So those are, and I heard another tip today, what can you give up that's your expectation of normal? Like, you got to let that go. Right? Normally, I would be doing this on Friday night, or, normally this is what how my spouse would react to this situation, or whatever it was, or our kids always did their homework on time. I don't know. What normal is no longer exists. So the more you can let go of those expectations, I think the happier you'll be, and then, accept the new normal. So whether you're stuck at home with your spouse that you don't want to be your spouse anymore, or you're dealing with your employees over video now instead of having that huddle, in the conference room, or you're dealing with your kids who usually should be at school, and here they are, like, there's a new normal all around, and it's going to take us a while to figure out what that is, but we have to go easy on ourselves.
I've actually used the last couple of weeks with a couple of clients because, as I mentioned, I think to Nancy earlier this week on another conference call, I was literally mid-bench trial when we were ordered not to come back to the court on March 17th. And I've used the last couple of weeks with that client to kind of reassess and reevaluate some of our positions in the case. And I've taken that lesson and used it with other clients that were in the process of either discovery or gearing up for a trial, to really look at what's important to us, not just our legal objectives in the case, but the big picture. Because, the client that didn't care what it was going to cost to try a case, now their money situation's a little different, their financial situation's a little different. I see it in my own business. Our priorities have shifted majorly, and I've really tried to take almost like an hour by hour, day by day look at what's ahead of us with myself and with my clients. It's easier with some clients and it's difficult with others, like any other situations or changes. And I found that people's heads are in very different places than they were on, say, March 13th, March 14th. And I think the longer into this we go, the more their minds are going to be in different places. And frankly, none of us on this call know when this ends, how we come out of it, and what the new normal looks like when we're out of it. Some of my clients' businesses may no longer be in business at the end of this, which in one way or another may make that litigation we were working on more important or less important, depending on what their situation is. So I think it's really important for us as professionals that are guiding people to really manage their expectations. That's always our job, but I think it's really important now to not only manage their expectations, but manage their expectations with regard to all the unknowns that are out there.
Correct.
And I think, go ahead, Andrea.
No, I said that absolutely right. And I think repivoting to really focus on what's really important to your client is so important and such a gift to them, because they probably got so caught up in the right and wrong, and you're probably going to settle a lot more cases. They'll be done with paying less money. You'll get paid faster. Like, it's a win-win for everybody.
At least hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I'm seeing it too, and I want to go back to the point I made about like not letting employees go, because I know, Nina, you had a question about that. And so, one of the things, it's like, of course, I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to say it always depends on the unique situation of the client. But generally, I've been talking to my clients as they're looking for their downsizing plans. So, depending on the employer, there are different strategies that you have to look at. Like if you have a union workforce, for example, that's usually, it's dictated by the union contract and seniority. But if you're a small business, you may need a lot more flexibility from your workforce. There may be different things like that you have to deal with. But I've definitely dealt with since about March 12th, right? Because this all hit for us in New York on March 11th, when the governor said the SUNY and CUNY schools were closing. And I do some part-time work out at one of the colleges in that system. And that was when it all started hit for me, and my clients started calling before we even got into essential work, because they were already seeing, when Wall Street, for example, started working from home, all of the businesses around that in the Wall Street district saw a reduction in their business, right? So they weren't having the same income, and they were trying to make these decisions. And my first comment to them is like, this is not the time to fire somebody that you probably should have already been disciplining, because now you're in a situation where we've got new initiatives saying if it's COVID related, that there's paid family leave and disability and other programs in place to keep them working. And it's probably not the right time if they're afraid to come to work, for example, because of the virus, and you already were going to scale back anyway. It's probably not the time to say, well, your attendance hasn't been great, so I'm just going to fire you, right? Because now they've got a potential claim. Now, it's different in every situation, but I've been telling them, like, this is a time to reassess where maybe you weren't the greatest manager, and lay them off, let them get their unemployment, and and give them an opportunity to either self-select that they're not going to come back when you reopen, right? Or maybe what happens is they do their own introspection, as a lot of us are doing, and they come back and say, wow, I really actually have a good thing here. At least I have a job to come back to. And we don't know what that's going to look like. But I think it goes to your point also, Andrea, about what happens in families. And just generally, the conversation we're all having is that there's a new normal. And the first week was kind of a shock of, oh, this isn't going to last, right? Our brains just weren't processing it that way, of like, okay, this is like a snowstorm, right? It'll be over, they'll clean it all up, the roads will be clear, we'll be good, we'll go back to work. And that didn't happen. So week 2 was dealing with the, now I have to start coming up with a new plan. And I don't know how to plan, because I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know how long my money's going to last. And so it's so much to the points that everybody's making, is we just have to now, as we're moving further into it, accept that there are different strategies. And we always start with, what are our values? What are our priorities? And start there. So hopefully that's helpful. And if you need some tips on how to dive into your values, the gratitude list is a great way, if you're not that connected to what you value most. If you start tracking, I do a list of 10 things every day I'm grateful for. And by the end of 2 weeks, is what I tell most people, you'll start to see some of the same things show up on your list every day, or at least more days than not. That's pointing to the things you value most. So that would be a good place to start. How do you now align what you want to plan for with what keeps showing up on your gratitude list?
Yeah. Yeah, it gives all of us a new chance to look at things a little differently. As busy as many of us are, before the call actually started, we were talking about how busy and how we all are and how fast the days are going, because they're packed with activities, whether it's working on your business or in your business or dealing with family or financial issues or whatever has to be dealt with. But eventually, I think it will quiet down a little bit, if it hasn't already, for other people. And it gives you a chance to really take a breath and go, what's important to me? What do I want? What might I give up on the other side? And I think for my clients in particular, they this forced togetherness is helping to clarify things. Like, yes, I definitely want this marriage to end, is what I'm hearing a lot of. Other things I'm hearing is, oh my God, we can co-parent really well. Like, we can let go of all that conflict we were dealing with, and we have totally teamed up. Like, I know our marriage is ending, but we're doing really good by our kids right now. And I think that's awesome. We're gonna play on that. We're gonna draw on that for strength when we're looking at the financial issues that we're gonna have to look at. Let's use what you're doing well as the basis for all the other difficult conversations we have to have. I think focusing on your strengths rather than your weaknesses is a very good way of being in the world. And I think this crisis is going to show people where their strengths are. So I look at that as a positive. And I think it'll, hopefully more people will feel more resilient at the end. Because, I don't know, other people have been talking about, like, look, we come from good stock, all of us. We're here. Thousands of years of human beings. Like, we are here because of all those strong people behind us, all our ancestors and everybody that created us. And we're not going to just give in now. This is just another thing, and we just happen to be dealing with it. So we can do this. We can do this even better than anyone did before.
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife the other night about, do you remember the blackout, the whole East Coast blackout that came like a couple of years after September 11th?
Yeah, it was scary.
And so I was actually stuck in New York City. We live on Long Island. I couldn't get home for 2 days. But I remember saying to my wife then, and how unbelievably resilient New York City was. The lights went out, the traffic lights went out, and it was almost like no big deal. And I feel like a lot of that was we had gone fairly recently through the trauma of September 11th. And for a brief period of time, the city really came together around that. And I think if September 11th did that, that was really just an East Coast New York City thing. Imagine what's going to come after this, which is global. And that's actually gives me a lot of hope that maybe some of the noise that's out there, it's still going to be there, but maybe we can push that off to the side and focus on the good stuff and what's important, and come up with some new global, national, local, however you look at it, priorities to just deal with. There are much bigger issues than which party you are in. There are much bigger issues than whether you live in a city or a town or a rural area, because these types of issues affect everybody. Doesn't care about your age, doesn't care about your race, your ethnicity, where you live. Everybody's going to be touched by this virus.
Yeah. I do think it's going to be, it has to be for the best. It's just going to be hard getting there. But I love the positivity on this call.
And that's what I've been trying to bring that forward too. And I'll admit there are days where it's harder. And that's what I was sharing about a lot more this week, is that, you know, it's a process. And several people that I've talked to that work in the grief space, because I'm one of my largest clients for the past almost 16 years is in the funeral industry, and I teach at the funeral school here, and I do their continuing education. So I'm deeply entrenched in that community. That's, by the way, forgotten a lot of times as we're talking about healthcare workers. We forget about the death care workers and their exposure. So they're definitely overwhelmed. And I'm getting that vicarious trauma from them, who are carrying the vicarious trauma of the families who can't have visitation for their loved ones, and they're having to navigate how to help people through that. But it definitely has been an opportunity for us to look at what's important and find out, like, first of all, just, you know, I wrote my book, and I always am like a little hesitant to promote it on something like this, but I did write a book about this, and I have a little bookmark that has the 7 choices on it, right? Because it's so much about the 7 choices are about getting connected with where you are before you start engaging with another person. And this is a great opportunity. Like for me right now, I'm alone. I'm alone in my little, 650 square foot box here in New York. And I, they say, one of the great things you can do to make your life better is become best friends with yourself. Well, that's what I'm doing right now, because that's who I live with. So, but, really looking at forgiving yourself for having conflict right now. It's a lot of us, and I think a lot of us on this call in particular, and the people that are even going to be watching it as the recording that are drawn to it, we're probably the people that are used to shouldering a lot of burdens for other people, right? As lawyers, we do this. As counselors, we do this. I don't know the background of all of you, but I think most of you are in one of those 2 spaces, or a hybrid, right? And so we're doing that where we're taking on a lot of other people's burdens, trying to help them, and often putting ourselves last. And then it catches up to us. So forgive yourself if you're having those conflicts. Just acknowledge yourself for doing anything right now. Like if you put on pants today, yay, right? Good for you. If you showered, you put on makeup, whatever you did, you got on this call. If you cleaned, right? Whatever you did, whatever you accomplished right now, we're dealing with a global pandemic. And I'm all about moving forward, and I want to move forward, and that's what this call is about. But it's also not like telling you have to drive yourself so hard right now. Like there's this idea that, oh, you're working from home, you no longer have 2 hours commuting every day, or 3 or 7 or whatever you might have, right? And suddenly you have all this time. But you're adapting to working from home, maybe working at home with your family who needs things. And like we were talking about at the top of the call, it's the new things we're dealing with. For small businesses, we need to be looking at, are we taking advantage of the various resources that are available, and can we navigate that? It sounds like, oh, free money, but Nina, you know this too, because you and I talked about it, and Andrea, you and I talked about it. The applications for these things are very long and very detailed, and you may apply, you may be eligible for one that you're not eligible for another. There's a lot of nuanced programming around this that takes a lot of energy mentally at a time when our emotional energy is up, which means, right, that our intelligence sometimes goes down, and we're doing this all the time. And I've been beating myself up and trying to hold it all in. And this week, like, boom, the emotions that I wasn't dealing with hit me. And you know what? If that's where you are, that is totally okay. The choice number 4 in my book is free the emotions, because if you try to stuff them down, and again, I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir on this call, but you know, if you hold that in, it comes out in an ineffective way.
Right.
So just let it out, be where you are. And if that means tomorrow you have to do something, if it means you have to make a phone call and ask somebody for, you know, hey, can I have one more day? You know, I had a family member go to the hospital by ambulance this morning with a suspected heart attack. Everything I'd planned this morning got shoved back a little bit because I needed to deal with being of support for my family members, not knowing what's going to happen, right? Because the last place, believe it or not, the last place anybody wants to be right now, right, is a hospital. So, you know, he's 61. So he's, you know, in pretty good health, but still in a high risk category now, and going to the hospital where people are sick.
Yeah, life is showing us, you know, it's all its glory and all its glory here. So I don't know. I get, well, I have a book too, an ebook that I should mention.
If anybody wants to promote, go ahead.
Yeah.
Share your resources.
The ebook is called Divorce Without Court. And so, you know, how to have a more peaceful divorce. So it's about, really gets into what mediation and collaborative divorce is, why to stay out of court if you can, which most people can, and why to try these 2 options. So, you know, if anyone is interested in that, they can get that from my website. I'll put that in the comments as well. Okay. Make that available. But it's a helpful guide. So, do we have any other questions?
Any other comments?
Or comments? Anything working for you business owners out there yeah, you just put it in there already. Okay, great. Yeah. You know, any as a business owner, you're all business owners on the call right now, anything you would offer to the rest of us that you haven't heard so far? Or if you've gone through a divorce, you know, what worked for you? Or Adam?
We're in the process now of applying for the payroll protection program, which is one of the, we've been out of the office and our staff is all working remotely for 3 weeks. We haven't missed a payroll yet. And luckily we had a fair amount of money put away for a rainy day. But that's going to end at some point. That money's going to run out. So we've been eagerly preparing to file the Payroll Protection Act program application. The banks aren't ready, even though it supposedly went live yesterday, according to the Secretary of the Treasury. The banks aren't ready. The Small Business Association isn't ready. The SBA is not ready. The applications aren't even available. The actual applications aren't even available. So none of these loans are actually even, I don't know where these 700 companies that actually got their loans come from or what banks they use, because we've been on the phone with our bank 3 or 4 times in the last 2 days, and we're still weeks away from even being able to submit our application. And so we're dealing with that ourselves as a business. Our clients are dealing with it. The accountants I speak to are dealing with similar problems and programs. We took a look at some of the New York City programs that they promoted widely, which require you to substantiate a 25% drop in revenue. And I'm not sure how you substantiate a 25% drop in revenue. The New York City plan, I think, closed yesterday, actually.
Today.
Or today. I don't know how we would substantiate a 25% drop in revenue because we haven't even issued our bills for the month of March, let alone figured out who's going to pay and how much they're going to pay. So I feel like that the New York City program, in my personal opinion, after spending hours of what I now consider wasted time, was really just something that the mayor could talk about and say what a great thing they're doing, when really I don't think anyone but maybe the corner bodega or restaurant who had to shut down. And not that they are not worthy of help, but really if that program was targeted for those types of businesses, they should have just been more upfront about it and said so, because I think most ordinary businesses are not going to take advantage of that. And just parsing through some of the various things that are out there, I think Nancy just said it. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes energy, all of which are, believe it or not, in such scarce supply right now.
So it makes me think about someone like Nina, kind of pivot, like someone becoming the resource, the person that you turn to and go, tell me everything. What do I need to know? Like, there's a market in that, because we don't have the time to be figuring this all out. So I know you sent out something yesterday.
There's a market for it, but is it a financially remunerative market for me for that? And particularly within, the context of where we are now. So many people need help and they're looking for free. So so yes and no. But Adam, to your point as well, when I've started digging in, and I tend to work with solo business owners or business owners who don't have employees, there's a lot of talk about, we're doing all this for small business, but they don't really count solos as businesses. And often solos don't look at themselves as businesses, so they're not set up structurally as businesses. So many of these things, and I can understand why, they really are focused more on companies that have employees, W-2 employees, not companies that are dealing with an outsourced workforce of other 1099s and things like that. It's the W-2 employee, because that is the sort of industrial age model. And those are the people that they figure are sort of sharing more of the wealth with others. So there are a number of, payroll. If you as a business owner have not been putting yourself on payroll and you're the only employee, you may not qualify. And there are at least 23 million business owners across this country who fall into that category. Or people who are, within law firms, if you don't have employees, but you're all sort of the A-list partners, there too, you may not qualify. So to your point, Adam, I totally understand. You're parsing through 900 pages of gobbledygook to say, can I even get a dime? And yet the mantra I'm hearing, and I'll just say it now because it makes me want to spit, is we're all in this together. It's hard to feel that when you're doing your best and there's no pocket, there's no financial relief for you. So that's where, again, and we'll see what happens with the economic injury disaster loan I applied for. I don't know if I'll get it. But at least I can say I did something. I took action. I put on pants this morning. I got dressed. I took a shower. Those things, and that's the point I was going to make, Andrea, is what's I'm finding for myself as a business owner is creating a sense of structure for myself. Is to say, I'm going to get up by a particular time of day. For the first couple of weeks, I had gotten off of my morning meditation practice, and I was really coming into a funk. So I've gotten back to, I found a new podcast that I can listen to that, gives me a bit of grounding as I start my day. So those things have been really, really helpful for me to create some semblance of normalcy. And thank you, Nancy, for posting about the Chaos Proof Challenge. That is something that I was doing, one thing a day for 30 days. And that's what the challenge takes people through, is to kind of wrap your arms around that. The back end support stuff that's usually important, but never urgent. And you never have time to get to it. Now there might be time.
Right.
And I can tell
Somehow
you,
my sock drawer still isn't organized.
Yeah. Well, if you want to do the 30-day challenge, I got to tell you, I just did it. I just finished Nina's challenge, and she tells you 15 minutes, but I can tell you that I did most of them in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
Because what I discovered in this is, wow, I'm more organized than I thought. But I also, it was great. It was a great exercise for me because Nina's my person. Nina's my backup, right? And so while I was doing this, it had me really thinking about her. Like if I suddenly became incapacitated, which seems a lot more likely these days that I might be down for a week or something, how would I get everything over to Nina to keep her moving on my business so that my business didn't fall apart? And we talked about this in various times. I think Nina's talked about this with me on other calls when she's talking about this. And at your meeting, Andrea, about a month ago, right? And how it really is about knowing who that second call goes to, right? Because like for my family member right now, the first, the spouse was there. So the first thing was dealt with is get the ambulance, etc. He is off work, so it's not gonna, affect the work. But had he been a business owner, then you want to think about who's the second person to call. And this is a great time to be thinking about this and only having, I'm basically doing your pitch for you, Nina.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just shutting up. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Good. I'm good, because I really loved this because it was a way for me to also know that things are going to get handled, because I know Nina could handle things, but I also don't want her to be like scrambling to try and pull it together, even though I know she could. Like just like what we're seeing in our lives right now is that we're all getting through it, right? But if we plan for disruption and we have contingency plans in place, and if they're really easy to put together in less than 15 minutes a day, and we got 30 days, we're pretty sure we're going to have 30 days. I'm like encouraging you guys to go check out her program or something like that. Set yourself up with a structure so that you are just, again, making progress. Because as a teacher also, it's one of the things that I've been doing some improvement of my courses, and one of the things they tell us is always give small wins to the students, right? Because the earlier you can get them a small win, the more encouraged they are. So that's kind of what happens when you're taking a small action each day, so that if everything else falls apart and you couldn't even get pants on that, or you can't find toilet paper
Again.
or whatever. Yeah.
We're
So
fixated on
Again with the pants.
I know. I blame John Acuff for that, because he did a really funny video earlier this week about it, or maybe it was last week. And, but it's like dealing with the basic things. And if you have that one win for the day, it just makes you feel a little more accomplished. So like my experience that I was mentioning with Adam earlier, that he witnessed earlier this week, was I was trying to record my regular video that I do every Tuesday, and I wanted to come from a very authentic place to let people know it's okay to be wherever they are emotionally. Yeah, apparently I didn't check in with myself very well before that. And then when I think Adam and I were in the chat, and he was sharing that someone in his community just died and left behind 5 kids, and just the enormity of all of this hit me, on top of everything else we'd all been dealing with, and I couldn't hold myself together. But what I was committed to doing was going back and getting that video done so I could say I did one thing that day. And so it took me 3 recordings, and it still wasn't perfect, but I got it done. And I felt like at least then I was getting progress, even if it wasn't perfection. And I am learning to let go of perfection these days.
Good lesson.
So anybody else have some tips that they want to share about like what you're doing to keep yourself grounded, or get your workouts in, or keep yourself healthy? Anything. We need all of it right now. So feel free to share.
Well, start by putting your pants on in the morning.
I'm a big believer in pants.
I'm in a dress. Does that count?
I mean, they could be sweatpants, but as long as they're pants or shorts.
I actually look forward to getting dressed in the morning. Like I totally have my routine meditate, hopefully work out if I have time, depending on when my first call is, exercise, if I can, and then shower and get on my first call. So if it's at 8:30, I might not be working out. If it's 9:30, I am. And if I can't get outside, I'm running the stairs in my building, working out in my living room. I'm not getting outside as much as I want. I'm not getting outside even every day, which is bad. But if I can, I want to change that around next week. So at least I get outside, because there's no excuse for just being in this apartment, for 24 straight hours. But other than, I think a routine in the morning is amazingly helpful for me, and making that gratitude list in the morning and at night. So I'm bookending. It's the middle of the day that's still like going so fast, and I'm not as structured, but I'm working on it. Having my calls with my clients, time blocking more. I think this is really, I've always been wanting to time block more, but I think this is going to help me with that, actually, because your mindset needs blocking when you don't have the structure that you normally have. So you have to self-impose it upon yourself. That's what I'm finding.
But I think for me, like, my routines have been severely disrupted, not just because of the pandemic. We're 10 weeks into a 6-week house renovation project.
Oy,
So we're not living at home. We're living at my in-laws' house right now. They're in Florida. So we're not even living in our own house. And our project will finish God knows when at this point. We're hoping in the next 2 weeks, because there's only a few things left to make it livable again. And those things are quote unquote essential. So it's a matter of waiting for certain things to come in from the distributors so that they can be installed, sinks and stuff like that. But the one thing that we've been doing consistently when the weather's nice out is taking long walks every day. It was a game changer. It is a game changer to get outside, breathe some fresh air and some sunshine. We've had rain the last couple of days, which has made it difficult, but you have to get outside every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes.
Yep.
That's what's helped us, and the idea that hopefully at some point in the very near future we can move back home.
I hope it's sooner than later. It's going to feel awesome to be home.
So anybody else want to share? Jennifer, you want to share?
Nancy,
what
are you
you've been
muted?
doing?
Oh, there you are.
Nope. Yeah, sometimes there's a delay lately because of everybody being on Zoom, right? And on the internet nonstop. But yeah, Jennifer, do you want to share anything? I know you've been a little quiet. I don't want to make you speak, but we'd love to hear from you. Uh-oh.
We don't hear you, Jen.
Yeah. Okay, maybe you didn't want to speak then, right? You're welcome to put it in the chat and we can read it out loud for you if you want. But I know you all are talking about getting outdoors too, and that's something else that I've been really challenged with over the past couple of days, because Nina and I've been taking some walks, our socially distant walks. It's been super helpful dealing with the emotional roller coaster that we've been on. I'll own my own. I don't need to necessarily rope you into it, Nina, but I've been dealing with mine, right? And one of the challenges that I now have is trying to navigate that we have 2 confirmed cases in my building. And Andrew, you and I went back and forth a little bit about that, like trying to figure out like what's the wise thing to do once you've got that. It's on a floor that's not one I go to normally, but we do share elevators and common spaces, and the building's upping their disinfecting and cleaning, and my my partner, who we're now doing our 14 days apart just to make sure we're not infecting each other. That's one of the things that I'm challenged with now. So I was glad to hear some of the things you guys are doing to keep fit and everything. I know there are a lot of free resources on workouts and things online, and that's been one of the things that I'm looking at. Is like, my biggest concern is not keeping myself healthy at this point. It's like not being the one that carries it to someone else. And that's why I told Nina I'm gonna quarantine myself from her even for 14 days. And I know it stinks, but you know, I'm really starting to be more mindful, and I don't know if that's doing something, but that's another one of those examples of there's a small thing I can do and consider myself accomplished for the day, is that, hey, I didn't infect anyone as far as I know.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Wear the mask. My husband's been doing it for the past week, and I'm gonna do it now. Wear the mask when I go out, and hopefully I won't get anyone sick. I don't feel sick. Thank God. That's what I'm grateful for every single day. Everyone I know and love is healthy and well. So that's the main thing. So yeah. So
thank you,
yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. Thank you all.
We're at the hour mark, and I just want to say thank you again for sharing. Sorry, Jennifer, if you want to put anything in the comments, we'll make sure that they go out with the video. Also, sorry your mic wasn't working, and just stay healthy and mentally strong. If you need anything at all, what I keep telling people, if I don't have direct access to the resource that you need, I will help you hunt it down.
Me too.
Right.
I think we're all in that group, right? If you need, we can ask each other. Thank you. And Jen, I see you hosted the David Nagel thing, so maybe we'll see a lot of you or hear that you were all on that call. I think it's going to be great. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
day. Great weekend. Bye.